In today's education news, EE tells parents don't give under 11s smartphones. I have to say this is something I can definitely get behind. Now, I won't make it clear, I'm not passing judgment here on parents who have given kids access to smartphones, because I get the pressure we're under. We want to try and make our kids happy, and if their friends have got access to it, you feel like they might be left out if your children haven't got access to it. And to be honest, this technology has become so prevalent so quickly and so accessible without any of us really sitting back, reflecting and thinking about some of the negative impacts it can have. With my own children, they did not have a smartphone at primary school, and even though they're at secondary school now with a smartphone, I've put a number of parental controls in place to make sure they are getting the right balance with it. And even then, I'm constantly questioning whether it's too much. I might be thinking, but Mr. P, you are an advocate of technology. You want teachers and students using more technology, but the question for me is all about how we're choosing to use that technology. And that idea of screen time isn't necessarily a bad thing. It depends on what you're using the devices for. Now, if you've been on my training, you know I've talked about this for a number of years around how in education we need to be sort of teaching our students how to be creative through the technology and just not consuming. And I think majority of children who are given technology at a young age are just consumers, and that's where quite a lot of the negatives can happen. I do find it interesting, this is coming from one of the UK's largest mobile network providers who would actually profit from more devices being used and being sold. But they are trying to help improve children's digital well-being after receiving an increasing number of requests from parents. It's saying that under 11s should be given non-smart devices that have similar capabilities to the old brick phones. Bring back the Nokia 3210. This recommendation has come amid growing concerns of the impact smartphone and internet usage have on children's mental health and behaviour. And I'll speak, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of a lot of teachers here when I say we're seeing this in class. We're seeing the shorter attention spans, the issues and the amount of CPOMs that we're having to put in around what children are coming out with because they're getting access to harmful content, inappropriate content. I do think technology has a place, especially in school, where we can educate children about how to use it responsibly, positively and creatively to really transform learning. But I don't necessarily see that happening outside of school, and I think it's the negative sides that are being consumed outside of school, especially if it displaces other activities such as playing outside and talking to friends. I did a video about this Ofcom report that found a quarter of 5 to 7 year olds now have their own smartphones, which is really worrying, and I don't see a need for that, and I don't think many positives can come from that. And this Ofcom research saw it as a wake-up call after it found half of under 13s use social media, despite most of the big platforms having rules require that users are over 13. I actually have a lot of respect for EE to take a stand like this when they could easily profit from selling more smartphones. And the social media platforms need to do more. I mean, any of the social media platforms could easily put a rule in place to make sure no child under the age of 13 can sign up. But they're not bothered because they profit off it. And it's profits over safeguarding, really, for these platforms. If it was up to me, no child under 16 would have access to social media. I think the negatives outweigh the positives up until that age of 16. And there's also a role for the government to play in this as well. Recent government legislation aims to ensure children not exposed to harmful online content, such as material that promotes suicide and self-harm, eating disorders and violent content. The Online Safety Act places more responsibility on the technology platforms, introducing a legal duty of care towards their users. But this act does not come into force until 2025. Some critics are saying it does not go far enough to protect young people. I'm constantly sharing on all my training sessions loads of resources for how teachers can do more around digital literacy and educating our children around staying safe online, not necessarily encouraging children to use these platforms, but being educated about how to stay safe when they are old enough. But I also think we need to do a lot more as parents, and I think parents need to be taking more of an acting role as far as monitoring what their children are doing on their devices outside of school, because it's not always bad. It can be used in a positive way, but we've got to monitor, we've got to make the effort to keep on top and put certain things in place to make sure our children are safe. I can make a follow-up video to this if you find it interesting, with some recommendations, some things you can check to make sure your children's devices are as safe as they possibly can be. But ultimately, the best thing we can do as parents is not give children access to these smartphones until they are old enough.